Is the Red Dragon the best budget cinema camera in 2025? Now, this video really isn't a comparison between this camera and other cameras. This video is just to educate people and let them know that old gear isn't bad. There's this idea on YouTube that new gear is always better. The newest camera is better than the older camera, the newest lens is better than the oldest lens, and the newer lights and mics are better than the older ones. And it's just not true. I know musicians who record on, half a century old microphones because it works with their voice. I know DPs who use, 15-year-old cameras because it gives the look they need for their next project. People do the same thing with lenses, but especially cameras. Is this such a lie on YouTube? This is the Red Dragon 6K, and it is a decade-old camera. And that's a lot when it comes to technology. This video right here is to tell you all the specs and features of the Dragon and why it's genuinely a better purchasing decision in 2025 over the Komodo, over the Pixis, over the FX3 for at least some of you out there. For the cinematographers and DPs, not the videographers and wannabes. This is a camera for people who make their living off of shooting videos. This may be a camera for you. I've been shooting Red for about 4 years, and there are a lot of pros and cons to shooting Red, as there are pros and cons to shooting any other brand. However, I want to tell you why this may be a camera you want to pick up in 2025 over any other brand and any other camera. First, I want to start with the price. I bought this entire Red kit for $2,500. All of the parts separately, had I bought them, would have been a $7,000 or $8,000 price tag. When buying a bundle of gear, you get a huge discount, and when buying old gear, you almost always get a bundle. Now, quickly, I want to walk through this rig right here. I have at the base, the Red Dragon. On the back, I just have a V-mount and a battery bank, which, by the way, if you don't know, if you use smart batteries, any Neewer, Viltrox, or small rig battery, they actually have what's called pass-through charging. You can plug another battery into this and have it charge and deliver power at the same time. Yes, it's regulated, and yes, it's safe. No, it won't blow up your camera. Calm down. So if you do want to extend your battery's life, you can actually just slap an extra battery on the back and it works great. I use Velcro for that, it's clutch. On the side here, I have my Neewer follow focus because small rig follow focuses break every time I buy them, and I'm tired of buying them. So, get something else. On the other side, I have my Red Pro monitor. Sometimes I swap this out for my Red Mote when I just don't want to have an extra screen on hand, but I find it kind of useful sometimes to just have an actual monitor. So that's nice if I don't care about my rig being too chunky. On top, I have, unfortunately, a Lilliput, it's like an 1800 nit 7-inch monitor. Not my favorite, by the way. I'm going to be replacing this probably with like the Hollyland Pyro 7. I like that monitor. I like that it's a transmitter as well, but I just don't have need for it right now, and this does okay. Now, of course, as my lens, I have the Blazar Remus on right now, and then I have a Neewer matte box, and then my rails up front. Oh, also, if you're gonna be a DP, you gotta have dovetails. So I have my O'Connor RE certified dovetail. By the way, those things are like 650 bucks. And yes, I got that free in my kit. Thank you to some random rental house in Seattle who sold me this camera, which, by the way, if you want to find a good deal on a camera, talk to rental houses. They have a lot of cameras that they bought, have relatively low hours. You can trace their history, see if they've been dropped or damaged at all, which you don't get when purchasing from other owner operators. Now that we've kind of briefly gone over my rig, let's talk about the specs of this camera, why I got it, and maybe why you should too. This camera has a Super 35 sensor that is a 1.17 crop. Oftentimes when people hear Super 35, they think of 1.5 crop. No. It's just 1.17, which is almost full frame. Now, it being just shy of full frame doesn't bother me because I like shooting anamorphic for a whole lot of content. So I personally don't really mind that it's not quite full frame. I can't see a difference between the footage I get from this and the footage I get from other full frame cameras like the Lumix S5 or the Sony FX3. Something else I do like about this camera is its resolution, and that it is 6K. And in 6K, you get some incredible frame rates. You get up to 82 frames a second in its full 6K sensor readout. And wow, is that useful. When I bought this camera, I was considering getting the Blackmagic Pixis or the Sony FX3. Both cameras were mildly more expensive than this one, considering that they didn't come with any kind of rigging, cage, or other accessories. I knew I would have had to spend more out of pocket, and I quickly eliminated the Pixis from my cameras I wanted to buy because of its lack of frame rates. So that left the Sony FX3 and the Red Dragon as my contending cameras. Now, I like the FX3, however, I really was looking for a true cinema camera. If it is debated about whether it's a cinema camera or not, chances are it's just not a cinema camera. Now, the FX3 had some great frame rate options that really drew me towards it. However, I don't really find myself needing 120 frames or even 240 frames a second that often. In fact, I hardly ever do at all. However, 82 frames a second in almost full frame was very enticing. It's a little bit more than 60, allowing me to get things slightly slower if I need to. However, it wasn't too slow, not to mention I can pick any frame rate option in between. I can just tap it into the number pad on my camera and I can get 37.5 frames per second if that's what I really want. Of course, with Red, you get a whole lot more frame rate options than just what's offered in its full format 6K format. You can go all the way down to 2K and get 301 frames per second if that's something you need, and I actually have used that. So needless to say, frame rates are something the Red offers and it does not compromise on at all. Now, some other specs that were really important to me in this buying decision was RAW. Now, currently I'm shooting on the Lumix S5, which offers externally on the Blackmagic Video Assist a 5.9K B-RAW external recording format. It's something that I have used before and I do enjoy having that RAW capability. However, RAW out of mirrorless cameras, including the FX3, just isn't quite there. If you've ever shot RAW on a mirrorless camera, you notice it's incredibly noisy. The reason for that is the camera isn't doing any internal denoising process. So when you get a camera that just shoots RAW and is really intended to kind of only shoot RAW, you notice that it's less noisy than cameras like the S5 and the FX3 that shoot external RAW. Why? Because this is built to actually properly handle noise, and part of that is its dynamic range. Probably the biggest contributing factor to me purchasing this camera right here is the fact that it gets 16 stops of dynamic range. And that was really important for a few reasons. Red advertises 16.5 plus stops of dynamic range, and to be honest, it's a bit of a stretch. I've seen some tests come out and say that the Dragon does about 16.2 stops, and other tests, including some of my own, that landed really, really close to 16 exactly. Now, of course, these are all usable stops. The actual tests this camera really puts out in terms of dynamic range puts it actually over 20 stops of recordable dynamic range. It only has 16 of usable. And the reason I say that, and the reason you've probably never heard that, is because of course I'm gonna compare that to the FX3's dynamic range, which boasts 15 stops from Sony and 15 stops from your favorite YouTuber, of course. Now, the FX3 dynamic range is phenomenal and is usable in every situation. It's great, and there's nothing to really hate on it other than the fact that it's really more like 13.2. A7S III, a comparable camera, is 12.4. Both of those cameras advertise 15 plus stops, but why isn't it actually? It's not actually 15 plus stops because that's the recordable stops. The actual usable stops are 13.2 on the FX3 and, like I said, 12.4 on the A7S III. Now, again, both great cameras, both with great dynamic range, but we're talking a 3+ stop difference from a Red Dragon, and it's noticeable. When I import my Dragon footage into Resolve, I can immediately see the difference in dynamic range. It's not just about numbers anymore, you can see the difference. And when you can visibly see the difference sitting down in a computer without even comparing it to other footage, there is no argument to be had that any other camera in this camera's price range comes close to competing with its dynamic range. The next closest camera would be the Red Komodo, which was originally nicknamed the Baby Dragon, if you didn't know, because they were trying to give a smaller, compact, cheaper version of the Dragon, since this is one of the best sensors to ever come out of Red and one of the best sensors to ever be used in Hollywood, and that's by people who diehard shoot ARRI. Plenty of ARRI fanboys out there say that they would never shoot a Red unless it's the Dragon, because for some reason this sensor is just different. And the Komodo was built to make it look like the Dragon. It, in my opinion, doesn't really look like the Dragon at all. I think Red just kind of fell off when they were making that camera and it didn't quite compete. However, it's a great camera and is the next best camera to the Dragon in the price range, in my opinion. Now, dynamic range wasn't the last thing I considered when I bought this camera, and it shouldn't be the last thing you consider either. Now, I'm not just a professional DP and cinematographer. I actually do a lot of sound design, and on occasion, I hop on set and do on-set sound mixing and boom operation as well, which means sound is very, very important to me. I care about it a lot. I hate bad quality sound, and any kind of negative sound quality will steer me to or away from a camera. I didn't mention this on my rig earlier, however, right here, I have Wooden Camera's A-Box. This allows me to plug in 2 XLR cables, which run straight into the camera. This way I can plug in any mic that I want, and I don't have to worry about getting bad audio quality. Now, the audio drivers in the Red aren't the greatest. In fact, audio drivers in any camera isn't the greatest. However, they do a pretty good job for a camera, in my opinion. And to be able to run any XLR mic I want with phantom power into my camera without any weird additional rigging going on is a huge benefit to me. The fact that I can just slap on a mic, plug it in, and we're good to go just makes my life a whole lot easier, especially when I'm shooting interviews and documentary style content. Now, there are a couple issues I want to address. First are these Red mags. These things are notoriously hated online, and usually from people who don't know what they're talking about. Are these expensive and overpriced, and Red should have never made them and just went with something like CF Express? Yes, I'm with you, I agree with you. I don't like these things. I wish there was another media source. However, they don't fail. I've never had one of these mags break on me, and if you take care of them, they work great. They are fast, they do everything you need them to, and since they're proprietary, you don't really ever have to wonder, is it gonna work with my camera? It is a benefit. Now, people really complain about the cost of these. People don't complain that they're bad or that they don't work. People really complain about the cost. And I'll be honest, they ship with every single Red kit you buy. If you are going to buy a Red Dragon, if it doesn't ship with these, just don't buy it. These things are like, this is a 512 gig mag. I got 2 of these with my kit. Again, I paid $2,500 for my kit. 2 of these. These mags go for like $800 or $900 alone. So yeah, don't buy these mags separately. Make sure the kit you buy comes with mags, because I'll be honest, most of them do. Like I said earlier in the video, this camera is a camera for cinematographers and DPs. I use this camera pretty much exclusively for high-end video, cinematic content, whatever you want to call it. I put this camera on set. This shoots commercials, this shoots music videos, this shoots documentaries, it shoots short films, movies, and TV shows. That's what this camera is for. I shoot most of my other content with the Lumix S5 or the Nikon Z6 I have sitting on the shelf. They're great cameras. I don't really like rigging them out a whole lot. That's what this camera is for. All right, guys, well, that's about all I have for this video today. If you have any questions about the Red Dragon, please leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them all. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you consider getting a camera like this and not wasting your money on something newer that might just not suit you as well. Until next time.